Good morning. We're going to start a series here on the channel going through a couple of vices and kind of talking about different ranges of prices as well as what kinds of things are available on vices, how they work. So this is going to be a little bit of a work in progress. I'm sorry about all the mess. I'd say it's not good, but it is good because tying is my happy place, one of my happy places for sure. And it's really rewarded me over the years with, just a place to escape and kind of relax for a little bit. Cares of the world kind of go away. But, we don't need to go into all of that here in this video. But today we're going to be looking at the StoneFoe transformer vise, and that's this vise that is sitting here. I'm a one-stop shop, so it may be a little bit iffy as we work our way through this. I've got a different camera that will try to get a closer angle down here on the vise, or I can kind of go through and show what is offered on this particular product. StoneFoe makes great product. I've always been impressed. A lot of the tools that I have surrounding me will be StoneFoe from my bodkin. I'll show those up a little bit closer. Half-hitch tools, you name it. And just always really quality built and craftsmanship. I believe the company is out of Italy. And so with that, with no further ado, let's get into looking at the specifics of what you might find in the StoneFoe transformer vise. So now we're going to be moving up a little bit more close and personal with the StoneFoe transformer vise. I've got it kind of up on a little bit of a box to try to get it more at eye level. Obviously, I'm not going to tie this way. Typically, it'll be down on my table. This, again, is a very solid piece of equipment. I've used StoneFoe tools. They're half-hitch tool, bodkins. They're always just really solid. Quality made, craftsmanship, feel good in the hand, good balance in the hand. So when I saw that they had a vise and I hadn't been paying that much attention to it, I wanted to try to get my hands on one because I just have always appreciated the quality of the equipment that they sell for tying flies. But let's start by working from the bottom up a little bit. It's got a very nice solid base here, a couple of pockets. You can see maybe you can store flies in there, and when you finish them, you can store your hooks, beads, whatever, so that they don't roll away on your table. It's handy to have. They've also included on the back side here a number of places where you can store tools. I tend to store tools that I use the most frequent. The vise has this thumb screw here on the back side so that you can spin the head away from you or towards you and then get it in the position you want and tie it back and screw it back down. You can also lift it up, raise it up. This is the stem. So you can make that a little bit taller, and this is about as short as it goes. I think that's bottomed out at this point, and then I've got it screwed in nice and tight, so the head of my vise is not going to turn if I try to push it that way or this way. It stays right where I want it. So I want to take a moment and just talk about a couple of accessories that I'll have on nearly all of the vices that I tie with, and I've got a few. And one is this kind of a thing here, which is more or less a tool holder, a tool caddy. On the back end, you'll usually have a thumb screw that will allow it to slide up and down on the stem, but also the resistance it has in terms of how easily or more difficult it is to turn back and forth. I usually keep mine right at about that tension where it's not sliding up and down on the stem. I can turn it that way and get it completely out of my way. I could certainly turn it to get it completely in my way. But what I use this for is exactly what you see. It just holds some of your tools. And most commonly, I've probably see here, I've got a lot of different tools. There are a lot of different tools for tying flies that are incredibly helpful and necessary. But there are some that you turn to every single time, every fly. Those are the ones that I keep close at hand, either in these storage spots down at the bottom or in this kind of tool caddy here. So I can just grab my scissors and make my cut of my thread, and I can just throw them back in place. I can grab my bodkin really quick and use it, and then I can throw it back in place. I can grab my whip finisher from here, do my whip finishing, and put it back in place. My intent is not to overload this with every tool I own. It's to really just keep those tools handy that I'm going to be using a lot. So the accessories that I'm talking about here are ones that I see as useful, at least for me as I'm tying. The other accessory, and I'll go into more depth on that, is the one you see below it here, and it's the infamous bobbin cradle. I talk about bobbin cradles quite a lot when I'm tying flies because I use it quite a lot. So again, I've decided to go with a setup that works for me. You can hang some other accessories on here. You can take these accessories completely off if you prefer to have them completely out of the way. It's up to you. You have the flexibility. If you don't want those tools on here, you're just going to loosen them. They'll slide up and down on the stem. We'll loosen this nut back here, or the thumb screw back here. The stem will come right out of this base, the hole right in here, and these things will just slide off the bottom. So the transformer is a rotary vise. I use the rotary feature all the time. They've done an amazing job with it, as I would expect. I've got a nice thumb screw right here, which is going to put tension on the rotation. So if I crank that fully clockwise, like that, you'll see it's very difficult for me to move that at all. So if I don't want my head, if I don't want the jaws of my vise to swing on me at all, I can tighten that all the way down. But I can also loosen this all the way up. And you can see how well that actually turns. They've just, as usual, put a lot of thought and use quality materials and craftsmanship and engineering to make this vise. For me, I'm mostly going to be kind of in a territory a little bit tighter than that. Not so that it will completely swing on me. But if I want to look at the backside of my fly, I want to be able to lift it up like that and look at the backside of my fly. I can still do rotations with it this way. If I want it to stay in place like that, I need it to be at that kind of tension. You'll see as I loosen this up, that's what's going to happen. But this is really smooth and nice to have if you're, tying material on here and you want to rotate the head of the vise. But most commonly, I'm going to be in this neighborhood right around in here when I'm tying. So another aspect, and I don't change this an awful lot when I'm tying a fly, but we do have a nice pivoting joint right here that's held in place with just an Allen wrench. So I keep Allen wrenches handy. I can loosen that. You can see now the jaws of my vise are, perpendicular, or parallel to the head of the vise. If I move some stuff out of the way, I could move it all the way up here. Basically can move it just about anywhere I want. What I most commonly do is see if I can show this, but I want the axis of my hook to be right about where the jaws are clamping down onto my hook here. And once I've determined that, I'm going to come right back in with my Allen wrench. We're going to lock that in place. So in positioning, for me, I like to have the angle of the jaws here, put my hook into place where the hook, shaft, shank, whatever you might want to call it, lines up pretty well with the axis here of the head of the vise. And what that does is it makes it so as you're doing your rotations, the shaft of your hook is pretty much staying in place. It's not going up and down based on your spinning. It pretty much stays right in place, which is really helpful for like you're doing a quill body or you're doing a hackle to ensure that you have really clean wraps, one right in front of the other. You're not having to move your hackle pliers backwards and forwards to compensate for the fact that your shaft of your hook is going up and down. So really good for if you want that inline kind of a feature on your vise. So when it comes to your actual getting to the meat of the matter, right here are the jaws of this particular vise. And that the purpose of the jaw is to hold your hook in place, and that's the whole purpose of having a vise, is to hold your hook firmly in place while you're adding materials onto your fly. This design is very similar to a lot of vices that I've tied with before. It has two different points. One is a thumb lever and one is kind of a thumb screw. If I turn my vise this direction, hopefully you can see the gap here. As I tighten that down, I have no gap between the jaws, and as I turn this way, I can increase the gap quite dramatically. So when I'm tying, I'll just take my hook and I'll put it into the vise, and then I'll tighten my thumb screw here to a point where I can now let go of it. It's held in place. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab this thumb lever and I'm going to pull it up. And that's just going to tighten it even more. You can hear that hook is going absolutely nowhere. So one of the other features that you'll see on a lot of vices is this little guy here. It's pretty much just a spring. We call it a material clip. And what it's used for is to pull material out of the way while you're tying your fly, so it's not getting in the way. Stonefoe made a really nice choice here in terms of being innovative in how they have that working. I have a thumb screw on the back side here, which I can loosen to the point where this thing just will flip all over the place. I can tighten it down pretty tight to where it's hardly going to move at all, or I can kind of put it right in the middle where it'll move, but it'll stay kind of in place for me. So that's the thumb screw that tightens down, keeps our material clip in place. On the opposite side of that, we have a really quick and handy bobbin cradle, reverse on the reverse side. So if I'm tying and I want to get my thread out of the way for a second, I can just hang it over this here. And that bobbin, you can see, is kind of out of my way. I can work more freely around the hook without my bobbin in the way. If my bobbin is just hanging and I'm trying to tie material on, you can see that it's going to get in the way. So just to quickly demonstrate where and why a material clip can be handy, I'm going to tie in some crystal flash here, and just a red color. I'm not tying a fly here, so I don't really care how messy this is or isn't looking. But crystal flash is a good material to make this example with, because you can see what it can do. It will bunch up, it'll spin up. Really hard for me to tie material on the fly if my crystal flash is kind of in that kind of a position. That's what the material clip is for. I can take that crystal flash, I can move it back, I can sink it down into the spring here, and as you can see, it's holding that material in place and out of my way. I use material clips from time to time depending upon what I'm tying, but if I've got a lot of materials that I'm adding to the fly, sometimes I'll go ahead and pull them back and put them in a material clip just so that they're out of my way until it's time for me to use it. When it's time for me to use it, I'm just going to go ahead and release it. I just have to just pull it out, and I can go ahead and make my turns. So I briefly demonstrated talked about one of the accessories from the beginning, which is called a bobbin cradle. And I've got that attached here on the stem of the vise. The bobbin cradle usually will have a thumb screw on either side. If I loosen this one up on the front side here, or at least the side that's facing me now, you can see that I can slide this bobbin cradle up and down on the shaft of my vise. It's also how you're going to get it on the shaft of your vise. The backside thumb screw on the bobbin cradle. When I loosen it, you'll see I can pull that in out, so I can more or less push my bobbin cradle out more that way, or I can push it in so it's a little bit closer. I usually don't muck around with that too much, but you do have that flexibility. So once you've got it where you want it, you're going to want to kind of tighten it up a little bit. I like to keep tension on it, but I don't want it to be fixed in place. The reason is because I use it all the time. And by not tightening it down completely, it stands up and stays in place, but when I need it out of my way, I can just pivot it, turn it, and move it out of my way, and continue tying my fly. Then when I need it again, I can just swing it right back into position, and I'm ready to use my bobbin cradle. On this is the bobbin cradle itself. We'll rest our thread right in this groove here. We've got a thumb screw on this side that will allow this to slide up and down and all the way off. So usually you want this groove to be facing your bobbin. So I'm going to just kind of hold mine in place right about there. So I talk about that a lot, or I shouldn't say I talk about it, but I refer to it a lot, where I'll say, hey, I'm going to throw this on the bobbin cradle. And that's what I'm talking about, is this little thing here, which is really, again, it's kind of like the back one, but it's really going to move your thread completely out of the picture for a minute while you're tying materials on your fly. When you're done, you just lift your thread off of that cradle. I'll just, kind of like I showed before, I can just turn and move it out of my way, and I'm back in business. So the bobbin cradle is one of those accessories that is not just gee whiz, but it's something that I actually use quite a lot. So let's go ahead and kind of finish up our look at the transformer vise, and that's just the name itself, the transformer. It's called that for a reason, not just because it's a cool thing to say, but it is a transformer vise. It's got this really nice Stonefo has done a really nice job with this sleeve that you can see. You can grip very easily. It pulls straight back. When I pull it straight back, I'm able to take the jaw of my vise completely out. You might be asking yourself, why would I ever want to do that? Well, there's a reason. This vise comes with 3 different heads that you use for different types of tying. So if I want to switch really quickly to like a streamer head, pull that sleeve back, throw this head in, and you can see I've just transformed my vise, to a streamer vise, streamer head. So I'll have my hook sitting straight out there, really good for saltwater flies, larger attractor patterns, or if you just want to be 100% certain that the axis of your hook is right at the axis of the turning point, this is a great head to use. From there, I can just pull this back just like that, keep it held back, and just like that, in no time at all, I'm back to what I usually tie with. Then finally, the third head that will come with it is going to be for tying tube flies. I'll be honest, I don't tie a lot at all. I don't think I've ever tied a tube fly, but I do want to investigate, understand it, just because I love tying flies, and I think I understand the general mechanics, which is we put a kind of a hollow tube on here, and we actually tie what would be our fly on that hollow tube. From there, when I'm out on the river, stream, lake, I'll take that hollow tube that I've created here, I'll slide it up on my leader, up the tippet, and I'll tie on a hook at the bottom, and then it'll slide right down over the top of that hook. And that allows that to kind of swing up and down, which can be really helpful if you're swinging a fly. Again, I haven't tied tube flies before, but I have a head to do it. But basically, that's why we call it the transformer, not we. That's why Stonefo calls it the transformer fly, because vices, because that's what it is. It's 3 vices, at a minimum 3 vices in one. And like I mentioned, those 3 heads come with the vise itself, so you don't have to go out and buy these additional accessories. They come with it. But again, you can just see how quickly I can transform back to what I most commonly tie with. So with that's kind of a good demonstration of how the transformer vise works from StoneFo. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. However, this vise will cost you about $550 or so. So there is a bit of an investment there. If you're just starting to tie flies, I would not recommend getting a vise of this quality until you know whether or not that's going to be a passion of yours or something you're going to turn to a lot. I started tying flies with a really cheap. I could clamp it onto my table or my desk. This is a pedestal, which is what I tend to like to tie with, but you'll also see the C-clamp ones that will just clamp down onto your table, pinch your table onto your table and stay in place. My first vise was like that. I just cranked it down on my table to hold it in place. I had a little lever in the back that opened the jaws of the vise, and I'd close it back down. It would pinch, and that was all there was to it. There was no rotating feature with that particular vise. It's a really good starter vise. That's how I learned what I learned on. Probably, I would say under $100, maybe even under $50. It depends on what you're looking at, but you can get one of those. I would recommend you start there with a less expensive vise, but if you find yourself enjoying it as a hobby, or you enjoy it because you like to tie the patterns before you go out to fish and you don't want to buy them at the fly shop, or if you want to just develop your own fly patterns and you're just really engaged in fly tying, this is a good investment to make from my perspective. It's a solid vise. It's 3 vices in one. It's very well made, as all the products that I've used with StoneFo have been. So if you do want to invest in it, just keep in mind about $550. I'll be in the series showing other vices there are vices that go up to $1,000, and there are vices that have some really great features that are kind of in between the $50 to $500 range. So hopefully this has been helpful as you consider what you want for tying your flies. I would recommend it for those who are pretty serious in tying flies. It's a good piece of equipment. StoneFo did a great job.